Okay, I am about to share the screen with you guys to do your forecast for the week of March 14th to the 20th. There are two things that I want to say before I start. There was a conjunction with the Sun and Neptune that I talked about last week that is happening on the 13th. And no, it's happening on the 12th. It's the 12th or 13th. I'll look at it here in a second. And then I also talked about the upcoming Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. Both of these are happening in Pisces, and the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction is happening in April. And so that is really about all the things that I talked about in my intro last week whenever I wrote that big long forecast, which I have another big long forecast that I wrote out for you guys, because I feel like some people like to read while others like to watch. Bear with me because I don't do videos, and so I might look down at my notes just to make sure that I, am able to talk about everything that needs to be talked about for this week. And I wanted to also say that this week and the upcoming weeks are a prelude to the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. So this is really preparing us for what's to come. And it's wanting us to prepare in a certain way while also carrying on the themes of observation and discernment and liberation from the things that are no longer serving us anymore. So let me share my screen and we will jump into this. Okay. So here we have, let's start, even though for this forecast, I said I was going to start on the 14th, let's start at the 13th. I talked a little bit about this last week, and I want to talk a little bit more about it. And what that is the Sun and Neptune conjunction that is happening on the 13th. Right here, the Sun is in a new phase to Neptune, okay? And then once this conjunction, once the Sun starts, moving, it continues to move along, it's going to pass Neptune and it's going to become a balsamic phase. So on the one hand, we're having this energy leading up to this, up until the 13th, of something new is being sparked, something of a creative nature, something that is wanting to be acknowledged as co-creation with something bigger than yourself. It is wanting to be used as a spiritual tool, something to spiritualize with, something to transcend your circumstances with. And this is something that is wanting inclusion and equality. And it's not wanting to do the lower vibration of the Leo thing, which is the natural ruler of the Sun, the natural ruling zodiac of the Sun. It is wanting to do the higher vibration of it, which is inclusion, that we all have something special and something unique and intrinsic to each one of us that we came here with. And it is to be taken responsibly and to be used responsibly in a way that benefits not only ourselves, but others. And so this is really a time where something's going to come up, the seeds of something that is going to be something creative, that your soul is really guiding you because it wants to actualize it. And it wants you to remain humble about it, though. And so after this conjunction happens on the 14th, we see that the Sun has passed over Neptune, and now this is in a balsamic phase. So we got the taste of what it is, this creative thing that's being revealed to us, that's instinctual, that's not wanting us to necessarily react. It's wanting us to have thoughtful responding. And in order to do that, the sun crosses over Neptune into a balsamic phase because it's letting us know that there are things that we need to tidy up before we can put this into full actualization. And so this can feel like one foot in the past and one foot in the future, but you can't go back to the past, right? What was before this thing that was revealed to you, and you can't move forward until you've cleared a path and released the past content that is getting in the way of you actualizing your purpose and your creative potential. And so this is all about really discerning and being honest, very honest with yourself about what needs to be cleared up. And like I said, this is a prelude to that Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. So you have to have some observation and a little bit of detachment for all of this, okay? And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel whatever comes up for you. That's not what we want to do. We don't want to like spiritually bypass this. We don't want to suppress anything, which Pisces can be suppression, and it can also be illusions or disillusionment. And so we don't want to create the illusion that we are ready before we are, or we don't want to create the illusion that we've got it all figured out. So there's some stuff that we've got to do beforehand. And this is really about working towards a new cycle that is abundant with clear and honest desires. And so not getting into the fabrication of illusions from defining things, okay? You need to be an observer in your life, and you need to honestly acknowledge things, and you need to let them come and go. So think of yourself in a Piscean way. You aren't a wave that is separate from the ocean. You're part of the ocean, which a wave is part of the ocean. It's not separate. Sometimes being at the peak of a wave can feel like it's separate from the ocean, but it's not. It is part of the ocean. Everything is part of the ocean. So we want to like keep this in mind because you have higher guidance here. If you are willing to get curious about your inner voice and the synchronicity that is happening in your life, and fear can come up, okay? And when that does, you have to think to yourself that this is not a bad thing. This is something that is signaling that I haven't done this before, and it's okay to acknowledge that I'm afraid, but I've still got to put one foot in front of the other. I can't get stuck. I can't be stuck in the past, and I've got to release things in order to create a new path for the future. So the moon is in a waxing gibbous phase up until the full moon that happens on the 18th, okay? And so a gibbous phase really harks to that sun crossing over Neptune, and then the moon transitioning from the sign of Cancer into Leo. So what does this mean? Well, a waxing gibbous phase is like tidying up things. It's the time to really heal and deal with what is coming up and needs to be dealt with, and what is being shown and having a light shine on. Whenever the moon is moving into Cancer, into Leo, this really signals for us to reconcile emotions and have courage about reconciling these emotions, that it's okay to feel what's coming up, that it's actually really courageous to feel what's coming up, and that it's also a universal experience to be afraid of feelings. And ultimately, that's really unnatural. And so we want to get back to our natural selves, which is feeling it, acknowledging it, and putting one foot in front of the other and continuing to walk through it. We don't want to stay stuck. We want to have the courage to look at the things that the light is wanting to be shined on. And so this can be all of a sudden kind of this emotional content coming up because, like I said, the sun passed over this. It's wanting us to tidy things up. There's a repeating theme of this waxing gibbous phase before the full moon. And so this is really about viewing yourself as equal and not inferior to others. Or on the flip side, this is about viewing yourself as equal and that others are equal to you and that you're not superior. This is all about inclusion. And here's the thing that I think a lot of us forget about is that across the board, we all have minds that operate in a very similar way. And we all have to deal with emotions in order to evolve, period. So there really is inclusion. There shouldn't be an inferior complex or a superior complex. So this is also asking for authenticity. At the highest expression of all of this Neptune sun and this Leo moon, this is asking for authenticity. And that takes courage and that takes honesty. So on the 15th, we have this Leo moon that is squaring Uranus and Taurus. This is really another repeating theme. And this is like signaling to really liberate ourselves from any type of value system that is not in alignment with the growth that we've been having as of lately. And it's okay to change our values. That is really natural for our values to change over time. And so this is asking you to take a look at this again, okay? And it's asking you to liberate from old desires and old values and to really start to think about what values are in alignment with your authentic and natural self right now. Because a lot of us are walking around with past trauma or past experiences and dictating how we treat ourselves and how we treat others and how we allow others to treat us. And this is a time to be shedding all of that. This is to be authentic. You've got to shed some of that because that is an illusion. We aren't separate. None of us are better than the others. None of us are less than anybody else. So this is also asking you to really look at what is creative about you and how you can use these resources on a day-to-day level and it be beneficial to others. It can be beneficial to you and that it aligns with your values, the new values and desires that are coming in right now. And a lot of this will happen and it'll be like these kind of aha moments because we've got Uranus at play and we've got the Aquarius and Leo axis going on. So this is also asking you to really look at and rebel against in a good way, meaning throw off, let go of, liberate from any emotions in regards to personal relationships and the values with yourself and how you align that, okay? This is also asking you to liberate yourself from anything that is keeping you from acknowledging the divine feminine that exists in all of us. And it's also asking for what is keeping you from honoring the divine masculine in all of us. This does not mean, this isn't specific to guys in one way and girls in another. We're all androgynous by nature. That is something that is natural. And it's asking us to put this more in balance. And so in order to do that, we have to authentically look at that. And so this can be liberating from things or thoughts or internalized misogyny or internalized toxic masculinity that all of us carry. This can be about really liberating yourself in a sexual way and figuring out sexual creativity and living in that authenticity instead of living in fear of it. This can be liberating from thinking that creativity is not something that you could use in multifacets of your life in a way that is honoring the feminine and the masculine. And then on the 16th, this is interesting. Now we have a moon that moves from Leo to Virgo, okay? And Virgo is very much, it's an earth energy and it's a feminine energy. And it is the inner expression of thinking, analyzing. It's a purification. We don't want to get into being perfectionist though, because that is not obtainable. It's not real. It is an illusion. So really, this is about taking a look at ourselves and using the content from the past as a way to metamorphosize the psychological content that we're carrying and to have discernment about the shame that we're carrying that is keeping us out of alignment and out of authentic values with ourselves and being able to meet our own needs or keeping us out of an authentic relationship with self. So all of this stuff that I'm really talking about leading up to April is going to be about observing yourself in relationship to self and with others. If we want to change the world, we cannot start with a group, unfortunately. It's been tried and it doesn't work. We have to start with ourselves and we have to start looking at ourselves in relationship to ourselves in order for any type of progressive change to happen. And so this is really asking for you to metamorphosize the content from the past that has been traumatic or has created a fear of abandonment, a fear of trust, a fear of betrayal. This is about metamorphosizing this and using it as a way to get more in touch with yourself instead of separating you from yourself, okay? And this is about learning what your new values are. Again, a lot of repeating things in order to be able to meet your own needs, okay? For any change to happen, there has to be a personal relationship with self and being able to meet our own needs and to be able to actually know what those are. And that comes from knowing what our values are. And a lot of us are carrying around a value system that has been conditioned onto us from our past experiences. And therefore, we're not living really in the truth of what is occurring right now because our perception of everything is being filtered through our past experiences. When we observe ourselves in relationship with ourselves and with others, then we get to see that emotional content, that psychological content that is really keeping us separate. And when we don't be an observer in our own life, we tend to not be able to see the truth of what is arriving and unfolding right before our very eyes, because everything is being filtered through our past experiences. So this is really like looking within at our emotional content, and instead of being shameful or feeling guilty about it, it's really about metamorphosizing that into something else and using it as a way to see, hey, what are my values? Like, I know I was taught this, but like, I don't like how that made me feel, and I don't like the situations that came up. I need to look at who I am and who I absolutely am not. And I need that to help root me and ground me in a new value system where I can really honor myself and live in authenticity. And this isn't trying to perfect or fix something to perfection. What happens whenever we're in a mutable archetype like Virgo, we can have the illusion of feeling stuck, but what really happens in order to like have a purification process happen, we have to start putting one foot in front of the other. We have to realize that the value is in the effort and it's not in perfection or getting things right. And it's about showing up, having an intention in mind, doing it and letting it go and not being attached to it. And so these are really all lessons in not being attached to the past and not being attached to any type of outcome, okay? It is really just observing. So this is asking you also, like, what do you want? What do you want in life? What materials do you have at hand to help stabilize your life, or to craft your life the way that you want it, or to devote yourself to, that has that meets your values and feels right and authentic to you and feels true to yourself. This is also about listening to yourself, and it's really about releasing shame. So on the 17th, this is the day before the full moon in Virgo. So this is really awesome. This is more of that tidying up and clearing. So Artemis, she is conjunct the sun now. And this is in Pisces. And Artemis is the asteroid of the hunt of the full moon. And this is happening the day before the full moon, which I think is really interesting. And this is opposing the full moon, by the way. So it's asking for an integration of some sort. And this is, she represents the crossing of paths, the protection of children, of innocence, of birth, the protector of animals. She is also an embodiment of androgyny, because she's not afraid to step up and fight or put in action. Some people like to say that she's kind of dual, which on a lower expression of her, duality can be at hand. So kind of like out in public being one way and then behind closed doors being another. But here, this aspect between Artemis and the sun is really calling forth your inner child to be expressed and to be looked at in order to cross the path, you know, into this new cycle. So there can be content that you might not have been aware of, or maybe you have been, but you've been suppressing it. And so it's created a lot of distortion within your life. And it stems from childhood or childhood trauma. And it's about not feeling protected or not feeling seen for who you were. And so this is really asking for you to let go of the criticism and the shame and the guilt that you are carrying that was projected onto you by others. So I want you guys to think, if any of this is coming up for you, I want you to think about, go back in your childhood and think about when you felt like you needed to be protected and you weren't, and how that's affected you. Artemis can also be really angry. So this can be, and I know that I've personally worked through childhood anger, and it still can come up for me from time to time. This is a really great time to be working through anger and not being reactive, being responsive. And how we do that is by discerning where it comes from. And so thinking back to your childhood. And so whenever you get a trigger that triggers this anger, we really need to be able to discern where that comes from. Instead of being critical or suppressing it, there needs to be some curiosity, like a child, right? To be curious, like, where does this come from? Why is this happening? And what can I do to live in the truth of the experience that's really happening right now, instead of living in the fear from my past? And so this is a call to really, whenever the anger comes up, to step back and to discern, okay, the trigger of this was this. So where in my past did I see or feel or recognize feeling like this? When and what happened? What occurred? Did I feel protected? Did I feel like someone wasn't protecting me? And this can be around themes where we've gotten into drugs at a young age, or have had sexual abuse come up as a child. This can also just be having really shaming parents. So this is all content in order to, you know, start this new cycle. We are tidying up all these things, and this is asking for really deep work, and to not be disillusioned. And in order for that to happen, we have to stop repressing what is wanting to come up and what is wanting to be reflected to us. Okay. So really, she wants to let that help, like she wants us to like that to happen. She wants to help facilitate with this. And part of this healing can be being out in nature and being childlike and, you know, climbing trees or reminiscing about that, and really letting those experiences heal us. Okay. And letting nature heal us. So let's take a look at the day of our full moon, the 18th. So we have a full moon happening in Virgo, and it's opposing this sun. That is how we know we have a full moon. When we have a new moon, the moon will be in conjunction with the sun. So this is a full moon. This is pretty much ending a 6-month cycle, and another Virgo cycle will start up with the next new moon in Virgo in 5 months. But if you think back to September 6th, that is when we had the new moon in Virgo. And so that was about starting some type of thing to devote yourself for. Maybe you were devoting yourself to honing your craft in something. Maybe you were devoting yourself to being of service to others. This is wrapping up that phase. And this is really about asking yourself, have you really been hypercritical, and have you gotten stuck in the paralysis of fear and perfection that is preventing you from bringing out these tools that you've been devoting and crafting and learning about for the last 6 months, okay? And so with the Pisces Virgo axis that this is occurring on, I have a mentor who he has a lot of Virgo energy, and I do too in my chart. And so I really resonated with this. And he was talking about the Virgo thing, you know, getting stuck in perfection, and you know, you don't feel ready yet. Like, I want to study more. I want to do this. I want to do that more. And it's really discerning, like, okay, I need to be courageous and I need to put one foot forward. And so how he talks about this is that a lot of times when we're still in perfection mode and we do the thing that we're not wanting to do because we're wanting to perfect it, what can end up happening is we can second guess ourselves or psychoanalyze it and, you know, wish we coulda, woulda, shoulda. And he taught me, it's such a valuable lesson. He taught me that not only is the value in the effort, it's not in the perfection of it. He taught me that when you've devoted yourself to something, especially whenever it's wrapped around karma yoga, which is very a Virgo thing, so being of service to others, and it's like this, the perfection thing is a lower expression of trying to learn the lessons of humility, to be humble, to look at others as equals, and all of these types of things. What he said is, you have the intention of what you're wanting to do, and so you do the thing, and then you do the Pisces thing, you let it go. And just knowing that the value is in the effort and that you had an intention and that you actually did it is good enough. That you will learn more as you go by putting one foot in front of the other instead of hyperfixating and becoming paralyzed with fear and perfection. And so I want you guys to think about, like, are you getting stuck in that? Are you being really critical of yourself and really not allowing yourself to actualize what it is that you're supposed to be doing because you want to perfect it to the point that you are stuck? And the beautiful thing about Pisces and Virgo is, even if you feel stuck, it can move, it can shift because it's mutable. So it as long as you start moving, like, it will mutate, you will learn, you will grow from it. So I also wanted to, yeah, this is a good one. So Sophra sign on this day, she's right here, is now conjunct the North Node. And this is happening in Taurus while this full moon is going on. And she is sextiling this Neptune, okay, and the sun, and trining this moon. So Sophra sign is the asteroid of discernment. She's the asteroid of soundness of mind and of temperance. So her being on the North Node in an earth sign, and the moon is in an earth sign, this is really about grounding yourself and committing yourself to being able to discern what materials you have that are readily available to use, in order to survive on some type of level. This is about discerning your values. This is about discerning with the sextile to Neptune, discerning the illusions that you've called into your life, and that you might have created a crisis because you are not listening to yourself. This is about discerning your inner voice in order to listen to yourself so that crisis doesn't continue to occur. Because what happens with crisis, the reason why it occurs with the Virgo Pisces energy is because we buy into some type of illusion of an idealistic nature where we have some type of expectation that doesn't match up to the idealistic definition we've given to something. And we are shown or proven by something or someone that they are not willing or capable to listen to you, or to value you, or to look at you as an equal instead of an inferior. And we ignore the inner voice that says that I deserve so much more than this, or the inner voice that says, like, this is not okay and I should be being treated better than this, or I do deserve better. And what happens whenever we ignore that is we resist the lesson. And when we resist, crisis ensues. And it's, in my experience and with the clients that I work with, it's always about not listening to their self, their inner voice. And so software sign conjunct that North Node is really about listening to yourself and letting go of disillusionment and illusions and guilt that has been conditioned on you, that is now affecting you and your relationships and affecting the way in which you do listen to yourself. This is about discernment of the truth and discernment of the illusions. And this is discernment about why it is that you've called in whatever it is that you've called in. This is not about being a victim. It's discerning that we're not victims. It's discerning that ultimately we do pick the things that come into our lives. And it's because there's a lesson, there's a teaching there that wants to be revealed that we haven't been able to actualize before. And so she is really wanting us to discern this. And ultimately, this helps shape our new relationship with self and our new value system. So we are going to look at the 19th now. Moving into the 19th, and this is whenever the moon moves into Libra. So this is a waning moon now. It's moved. We had the waxing gibbous. So we were letting go of stuff. We had the full moon. So it's the full moon is an energy of like pregnancy, of birth, of the excitement of something new on the horizon. It's the excitement of or the realization of needing to let something go. And now we have the waning phase, which is now we are releasing this. That is what we've been discerning what it is, how we need to go about it. It's been illuminated for us. And now we've got to back it up with action. We can't just talk the talk and not walk the walk. We've got to walk the walk now. And so this is about releasing and simplifying and letting go. Okay. And this is to be able to become in harmony and in balance with ourselves. And so this is really about releasing anything that is getting you out of balance. and keeping you from harmonizing with yourself and with others as co-creators. This is about being able to not only listen to yourself and figure out what your wants and your needs are and your values, but this is letting go of past experiences that are filtering your perception and creating turmoil and dishonesty in your life. And maybe you didn't know about it. And so now it's, we've been working on this discernment. Now we know what it is. And this is so that we can be able to be in relationship with others, not just romantically, but with anything. This could be nature. This could be, your higher power, what source is to you, creatress, creator. This can be your significant other. This can be your children. So whenever we don't let go of the past, like I said, everything is now filtered through this perception of our past. And so ultimately, it's not the truth. In order for the truth to be revealed to us and for us to actually acknowledge what it is, we have to shed that past stuff. And the way that we are able to live in balance and in harmony with others is by being able to not only ask and be able to tell someone or something what our needs are and what we want and we need. It's also about not being attached to that person or thing fulfilling us. It's also when we let go of the past and how it does filter and acknowledge how it does filter our perception, we are then able to listen to people, and we are able to listen to them in such a way as to be able to meet their needs, because we're not listening to it through the perception of our past. We're listening to it in an authentic way, meaning that we're listening to it, what someone is saying, and we get to listen to how it's actually being perceived for them instead of for us and what we've been projecting onto them. And this is something that a lot of people I find don't do. And so this is really like an important thing that a lot of us are here to work on. And this helps with releasing codependency. This is about releasing codependency. This is about releasing people-pleasing behaviors. This is also about releasing doing for others what you can't or what you are not willing to do for yourself. It is about releasing wanting to be acknowledged. This is about releasing not feeling like an equal. And to be able to feel like an equal, we have to be able to think for ourselves. And what I find with Libra stuff a lot of times is that we really have gotten away from being able to discern and listen to ourselves, because we are wanting to please others. And a lot of times it's an imprint from childhood and from past lives of survival tactics. And this is really releasing being a slave to something, whether it be being sexually. And what I mean by that is, if that's the only way that you're connecting with a partner is through sex and nothing else, then ultimately you are in sexual slavery. This is about really discerning those things and coming back into balance and alignment with yourself and partnership with yourself. That way you can harmonize with the exterior instead of outsourcing in order to validate. It's really about learning how to validate yourself. Also, a really beautiful but sometimes hard lesson with Libra when we're shedding all of that is if we're really capable of listening to someone and hearing their experience from their perception and not ours, and we can really see what they're hear what they're asking for. It's almost like a cry, even if their words aren't saying that, it's just whatever they're conveying to you. Sometimes the most supreme form of giving, and giving is a Libra thing, it's a Libra function. Sometimes the most supreme form of giving is by saying no, because you're stepping out of the way of getting in the way of someone evolving. You're not doing something for them. You're not being codependent with them. You're saying no. You're allowing them to figure out what it is and how to be an equal on their own as well. And no one ever feels equal if they don't feel capable, because people are doing for them, and vice versa. So a lot of times this can be about really listening and honoring when to say no. And then, okay, we're finally to the 20th. So on the 20th, we have Lilith in Taurus, and she is squaring Saturn and Juno in Aquarius. And this is really about a call to action to liberate ourselves from structures that we have maintained in our lives that no longer help us to improve. It's about liberating from anything that is getting in the way of us being our authentic selves. Lilith is encompassing of the divine feminine. She is the original natural wild woman. And this is about liberating any type of patriarchal values, okay, men or women, that have been getting in the way of you seeing your worth. It's about liberating from the anger that stems from these distorted patriarchal values that have been conditioned upon us. And this is really about grounding yourself into authenticity and into your natural nature. This is about living your natural self and throwing off any of that conditioning, especially in regards to gender roles, okay? And especially in regards to gender roles and partnership. This can even be, and we see this because of Juno, this can be because of not really realizing the subconscious content from prior lives and from this life that has affected you or me living in our authentic self, our authentic natural soul self. And so this is really asking for us to, and it can be uncomfortable, like the things that come up around this. This is also liberating from the way that we were taught to value sex, okay? Like procreation and sex is an archetype of Taurus. And a function, an archetype of Aquarius is not only liberation and rebellion, it's also trauma. And it's also to bust through anything that's been crystallized within us that is preventing further growth. And it most likely always has to deal with how we've been conditioned and how we've defined certain things in our life. And this is also something that's an androgynous thing. Lilith, okay, she was a bad bee. She embodied the divine masculine and feminine. When we think of matriarchal societies, that is Lilith. And so there's a lot of us walking around with a lot of shame wrapped around our sexual values. And this is another piece of the puzzle. And so if we think back through the whole week of looking at childhood trauma, looking at ourselves, observing ourselves in relationship, this is all coming to a head on this day. And it is because we are supposed to be actualizing our authentic selves. And we are supposed to be living in accordance with natural law. Like Lilith is total natural law, universal law. So this is nothing that's been distorted, especially about the divine feminine, and especially about sexuality and our sexual values. This can be wanting to discover other forms of sexuality. There can be people who are now thinking about bisexual or homosexuality, and they are feeling shame about it, and they are really needing to liberate themselves from the conditioning that is wrapped up around that. And that sexual creativity, okay, a Leo thing, is okay. And this is also about really, whenever in regards to sexual creativity, a lot of us, in order to get to sacred sex and sacred sexuality, we have to release or act out all of our sexual desires. And there have been a lot of people that are now realizing that this is something that they've been afraid to do, and that it's not authentic to them, and that it's not natural to repress that nature in them. And so there can be a lot of confusion that comes up for some, but this is really about liberating yourself from any of the conditioning that says that that is wrong or sinful or shameful, or that you should feel bad about yourself for that, because we don't want to distort that. This can also be learning that some sexual desires don't need to be acted out. That fantasy of them is good enough, and that is a way that someone can act it out. So this is a lot of sexual healing and balancing the divine feminine and the masculine. So this is your week of March 14th to March 20th, and I hope that you guys get something out of it, and hopefully I get better at these videos.